Hi, my name is Kees, and this video is about when to use a spiritual practice and when not to use a spiritual practice. So, when should I use a spiritual practice? First of all, that's a very analytical question, and it's one I get quite often. Basically, the reason for asking that question is because people want to be really analytical with their practice. But what practice is about is feeling what is right for you. Feeling what makes sense for you. Right? Stretching yourself a little bit in that, but not too much. So, a spiritual practice like meditation, for example, is something you should try to really find what works for you. And when you find what works for you, you should also try different lengths. Because, for example, for a long time I was meditating 20 minutes, sometimes even 40 minutes. But afterwards, 10 plus years of doing that, I found out that for me an optimal length is more like 50 minutes or an hour or maybe an hour and a half. So for me, what felt like an optimal length was 20 minutes. But actually when I would do 60 minutes, I would realize, wow, this is actually what's optimal for me. More 60 minutes plus, 60 minutes, maybe an hour and a half, maybe 50 minutes, but it's a lot longer than what I thought, which was 20 or 30 minutes, which are still like most of my sessions before were like 20 to 30 minutes meditation. So by looking at all these guys who were meditating a lot longer, I thought, well, I don't know if that's right. And I checked them out, and I checked it out by just trying it out, and I felt this is like next level. This is a lot better. This feels a lot better. So your spiritual practice really has to do with feeling out what works best for you, not only in technique, but also in length and intensity. And you want to be a little bit stimulated by it, but you don't want to overdo it because it's something that you want to regularly do. So you don't want to sort of burn yourself out to your spiritual practice. You want to more relax into your spiritual practice, you could say. That's really important. So, yes. So, when should you do a spiritual practice? To me, I think a spiritual practice is happening, one, because it feels good, and because you think you're making progress in a way which helps you. That's really important. And when should you not do a spiritual practice is when you feel overwhelmed by the spiritual practice, by the effects of the spiritual practice, or when you just feel it's too much, right? It's not that it's helping you right now, it's just too much. And you shouldn't basically do a spiritual practice when you feel really uncomfortable with it. And of course there are all these retreats and all these things that really, really push you. And I see the benefit of that, I understand it, but I think for your own practice, for an at-home practice, it should be comfortable, but you should also experiment with what works for you, the length, the technique, the things like that. It should be easy, it should be something that that works for you. And then you'll have the best results, because a part of why the spiritual practice works is because it becomes a sort of centerpiece of your relaxation, of your mental being, you could say, like being chill. But not in a Big Lebowski kind of way, but being more mentally chill while you still physically do all your things in the world. And perform even at the highest level. So while you're learning to relax mentally and keep an overview and keep your perspective, and keep your relaxation, you're doing a lot in the world. So your spiritual practice is kind of a center point where you go back to that intense relaxation. And at the beginning, you need a spiritual practice to do that. At some point, you might not need a spiritual practice to do that. And the spiritual practice can only come back like once in a while to help you remind of that inner peace. So that's a long answer for the simple question, like when to do a spiritual practice and when not to do it. So when to do it, when you feel right about it. Don't listen too much to other people's advice. See them as suggestions and find what works for you and experiment with that. And also not do the spiritual practice when you feel overwhelmed or too much, or you get too much effect too fast. Some people get an intense effect with meditation, for example, or with yoga, or with different other things. And when they do their spiritual practice, they feel like it's too much. They don't feel grounded. Well, I have a special thing for that, and that's a grounding meditation, which I offer to you for free. And it's in the comments, so look for that. Also, we're organizing, me and my colleague Flores are organizing a free webinar for you to join. And it will be very special. It will be very interesting. We'll tell about our whole methodology. And after that, you can see if that's something for you. If that's something you want to deepen in. If that's something you're interested in learning more about. So if so, click on the link below for the free webinar. And I speak to you soon, my friend. Bye.